This is the M2 MacBook Air and this is the M2 MacBook Pro. Now I've been using both of these machines for the past few weeks, and a lot of people in this market who wants to make a purchase, they may not know which one they should go with. In this video, I'll talk to you about my experience as a content creator and also give an opinion for those who may not be creating content and which one is more worth it as an everyday computer. A big thanks to B&H Photo for lending me this MacBook Pro to make this video. If you don't know, B&H Photo has more than just cameras. They have MacBooks, iPads, gaming gear, and a whole lot more. Check them out in my link in the description down below. And as a disclaimer, the MacBook Air I actually did purchase for myself. So let's start with the price of both computers and what you get for that price. Now starting at $1,300, you can get the 13-inch M2 MacBook Pro. And for $100 less, you get yourself an M2 MacBook Air. Now here are the specs side by side. And as you know, I'm not big on focusing on specs, but there are a few things I do want to call out for you guys. The MacBook Air is a smaller laptop with a bigger screen, and that's due to its smaller bezels. But you also do gain a notch, but that is not a deal breaker for me. Now the MacBook Pro also has the touch bar, which isn't a game changer for many people, and Apple knows this. Apple didn't put the touch bar on the 14-inch or the 15-inch MacBook Pro, so it's interesting to see it on this one. Now, the MacBook Pro has 4 USB-C ports and the Air only has the 2 ports. The Air also does have MagSafe charging and the Pro does not, which is kind of interesting. Beyond that, on paper, there isn't much difference. The Pro does have a fan which can help push out extra heat, and we'll dive into that a little bit later in the video to see if that even matters. Now the MacBook Pro comes in space gray or silver. The Air comes in 4 different colors. I have the midnight color, but seeing the Starlight in person, I think that one's pretty cool too. Now if you want to change the way the MacBook looks, the Pro or the Air, my sponsor Dbrand can hook it up. You can get yourself a totally different color for your MacBook just by installing a skin. Also for this midnight one that gets tons of fingerprints, a skin will help that not happen. So get yourself a midnight skin from Dbrand and put on your MacBook Air, and then you won't get fingerprints. Now regarding usability, the MacBook Air is such a light laptop, so for me, taking it place to place has been very nice. It takes up very little room in my bag, and I didn't realize how nice that was. Now the MacBook Pro isn't a huge laptop neither, and I never felt like it was too big, but the added fan does add some bulk, around an extra 40 centimeters, and it's a smudge thicker, and it weighs 0.3 pounds heavier. So all those numbers aren't a big deal, but when you sort of add them together, and then you factor in like stuffing a bag, and maybe that bag is full, those numbers do come into play at that point. So yeah, there's that. And then when we talk about the display, having that extra 0.3 inches, it does matter. Like it makes the screen feel much more usable, and then you have the smaller bezels. So watching a movie, it feels better. When working in Final Cut, it feels better. When doing side-by-side Windows things like writing a script or anything like that, it just feels better having more screen real estate. Now typing on the keyboard between both computers, it feels the same. And since they're mostly the same size, it's kind of a wash in that department. The Pro does have a touch bar, which I still think looks pretty cool, but the functionality for me to want to use it just isn't there. I don't hate it, but it ends up being wasted space. If they kept it on there, I'm okay with it. If they got rid of it, I'm okay with it too. Now day to day, both computers perform the exact same way. Now one thing I will call out is that when using both computers for a while, the MacBook Air does start to feel warm on the keyboard. Not hot, nothing to be concerned about, but noticeably warmer. Now both computers feel the same when editing videos in Final Cut, so flying through footage, no problems for the M2 chip. M2 chip is super powerful, right? So adding effects, text layers, all that stuff is perfect. I've edited full videos on both machines, no problem at all. Same can be said with Photoshop, Premiere Pro, and also Pixelmator. All those things work great. When rendering videos on both computers, the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air took exactly the same amount of time. But when rendering videos back to back, the MacBook Air progressively got slower, whereas the MacBook Pro stayed the same. So after about 4 renders, the MacBook Air took nearly 20% longer to render this video, and the MacBook Pro stayed within a couple of seconds the whole time. So you see the fan on the MacBook Pro, how it allows higher intensity apps to work better with proper airflow. The chip needs to throttle down to prevent the air from overheating. It seems like the Air needs more air, if you will. And so that's where the main performance differences comes into play. Are you a person who is working on video? Are you rendering large projects? Or even programming? Anything that requires a lot of power. If not, then you don't need the MacBook Pro. Even editing like a singular video, a simple video on the MacBook Air, it can do it just fine. So the MacBook Air is fine for video editing, just if you're doing hardcore video editing, you're in a professional workflow, you have time crunch and things like that, then consider the Pro. So when you compare the webcams, the MacBook Air is better. It's a 1080p camera and the Pro is a 720p camera. So yeah, take that how you want. The speakers are also better on the Pro since they're actual speaker grills, and the Air doesn't have grills at all. Now the Air speakers are solid and it's impressive how it sounds so good without having grills, but when comparing them side by side, you're gonna go with the Pro. The Pro is just absurd how good it sounds. Now for me doing a battery test, I ran it a full day the way I use my laptop. So there's gonna be some video editing in there too. Now I found the MacBook Air would die at around the 11-hour mark and the Pro can get me to around 13 hours. Now when doing back-to-back tests to tax the system, I get 4 hours on the Air and 5.5 hours on the MacBook Pro, meaning both computers have amazing battery life. No matter which one you choose, expect to be able to use it for all day for mostly whatever you need. Now, once you start editing or doing anything that requires more power, just know you'll lose a chunk of battery power, but that is expected. All in all, for you, which one is the best, right? That's what you're watching this video for. I would say for 99% of people, I'm gonna point them to the MacBook Air. It just makes the most sense. It's cheaper, has a better camera, and it's just faster. It's smaller and it's close to the same battery life. For me, if I had a desktop, I would get a MacBook Air as a companion, but my main computer is a MacBook Pro. That is my desktop and my laptop too. So anyways, I gave you all the information I have. Hopefully this video was extremely helpful. I do want to know down in the comments, which one do you want to pick up? Which one would you pick up? Are you considering one? Are you waiting for the M2 Pro or M2 Ultra? I would love to know. Let me know down in the comments below. Kevin the Tech Ninja, have a wonderful day. Take care.